Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Sri Tips here, and what I've got is the calculations for another gold refining here. So what we're going to do is I've already pre-calculated everything. I've got some 10K gold here. I've got 86.9 grams of 10K. I've got some 14K here. I've got 112.4 grams of 14K, and then I've got our pure gold ingot that we refined in the previous video with the new fume hood. So now what I'll do is I've got a melt dish here, crusty old bird. Zero this out. 112.4 grams of 14K going into melt dish. Zero this out. Now we're going to add the 86.9 grams of 10K to the melt dish. 89.6 grams of 10K. Zero it out. Here's our pure gold ingot. It should be 21.7 grams. And that's what we got. I've calculated that we need 262 grams of sterling silver to properly quart this gold. Our estimated yield of pure gold will be 123.4 grams, which is just below 4 tray ounces. So look over here. Let me get the gold off of here. And this is our silver that I'll be using to quart our gold. I'm looking for 262 grams. I've got 260, so we've reduced the amount of gold that we calculated that we needed, which is okay. Going a little bit under on the silver is not going to hurt us, especially by just a couple grams. Plus this dish right here only weighs about 3 grams. Let's take this out on the melt table and alloy our silver with our gold and our melt dish. Now we're going to alloy the gold with the calculated amount of silver. Here's the unquarted gold. I've rinsed it off, rinsed all the tap water off of it with distilled water. We've got it down to the bottom of this beaker, and what we're going to do now is add some distilled water to this. Distilled water. enough to cover the gold. Now I'm going to add some nitric acid. This is ACS grade. Technical grade nitric acid is fine for this. This is 68 to 70% nitric acid. Add an equal amount of this. Now we've got a 50-50 nitric / distilled water solution in here. It's already starting to react. I'm going to set it up on the heat now and let this nitric acid boil start pulling the silver and the base metals out of here. This is our first nitric acid boil, and I need to pour it off so we can go to number 2, but I don't have any room in my silver jars. So what I'm going to do is, I've got a 4-liter flask over here. We've got our giant funnel here that was gifted from one of my viewers. So what we'll do is we're going to set this thing up and pull those silver solutions in here through this giant Buckner funnel. Alrighty, a giant funnel calls for a giant filter paper. We're going to pour off the silver nitrate solution out of our gold. This should just be silver nitrate, a little bit of copper. Solution's green, so that means we've got maybe a little bit of platinum group metals in there as well. That's mostly going to be silver. Now this is a much larger batch of gold than my last video. Let's see, let's get some water in here before we set it on the heat. I'm going to add some more distilled water. And then we'll add a little bit more nitric acid. That's our second nitric acid boil cranking away. And now what we're going to do, if you look down here, this is our funnel that contains the residue from the nitric acid, or the silver jar. I'm just going to fold this up and remove it to my paper storage. I'm going to save this because this will contain some precious metals. Get this funnel out of the way. Down here I've got some pieces of copper that I cut up, and I use this copper for cementing the silver. This is my cement silver bucket. It's a 5-gallon bucket. It's full of cement silver. I've got some copper in here, a piece of copper. And so what I'm going to do is just add these new pieces of copper in here. And then now I'm going to add some distilled water. Got to dilute this silver nitrate solution with distilled water, otherwise the highly concentrated silver nitrate solution will passivate on the pieces of copper and the reaction will cease. Now we'll move this flask out of the way and just set it off to the side. Now we'll bring my bucket up that I used to cement the silver out of my silver solutions, and what we'll do is we're going to add the solution that we just filtered to this bucket now and start cementing out the silver out of this solution. Alright, what we'll do now is take our bucket, and I found a giant stirring rod. It's a glass stirring rod. I found this at a yard sale. We'll stir this up real good and make sure we got a consistent mixture in here. And this will produce some fumes, so I'll set it in the fume hood and let it react inside the fume hood, because it will throw off some nitrogen dioxide fumes. This is nitric oil number 2. Still putting out some fumage, but I think it's complete here. I'm going to pour this off into my silver jar. There's pieces of sterling silver in my silver jar. You can see them. And we use that to consume the excess nitric that may still remain in this solution that I'm pouring off. Now what we'll do is add some more distilled water, and then I'm going to pour in some more nitric acid, and this will be our 3rd nitric acid boil. I think this is 6 or 7 days on the silver cell here. If you look down in here, oh yeah, I love my silver cell. This will crank out about 1.5 kilos of pure silver for me in a 10-day period. And what we'll do here is put this back together. Now I'm going to take the anode electrode bar off. I've got some silver shot here. I feed this in to the anode basket up here. Boom. And then we put the anode electrode bar right back on. And the cell is ready to go. This 3rd nitric oil is complete. You can tell by the lack of fume production. And you may be wondering, now when I pour this into this silver, you're going to see a reaction. That's the hot nitric acid that still remains in that solution reacting with the silver down here in the silver jar. And people may be wondering, why doesn't the nitric react with the quarted gold up here? And the reason is because as the nitric reacts with the quarted gold in here, it loses its potency and can no longer penetrate. So what we're going to do is pour out the expended or impotent nitric out of here, and we're going to add some fresh high potency nitric acid to this gold, and then it will begin to react and pull more silver and more base metals out of the encorded gold. The acid we just poured off is still strong enough to dissolve silver, but it was not strong enough to penetrate into our encorded gold. That's why we add fresh acid. Now the fresh acid can continue to burrow deep into the center of each piece of encorded gold, remove all the silver and base metals from each piece. Nitric oil number 4 is gone as far as it can go. I'm going to pour this off now. See our gold in there looking good. I'm going to pour this off into the silver jar. And the gold is looking really good. Look at that brown caramel colored gold. It's exactly how we want it to look. Now we're going to add some more water here. Set it up on the heat. Pour in a little bit more nitric. I'm getting close to the end here. This is nitric oil number 5. The copper in that sterling silver makes a fantastic color indicator to let us know when we're getting close to having all the base metals and silver pulled out of our gold. Nitric oil number 5 is complete. There's going to be a whole bunch of excess nitric in here. You can see it's got some color. That means we're still pulling copper. And if we're pulling copper, we're pulling silver also. Add some water, not much. I'll add an equal amount of nitric acid, and we'll just let this boil away. This is our 6th nitric acid boil. We'll just keep doing this until our solution down here remains colorless. Nitric boil number 6. We've been on here probably an hour, maybe a little longer. And what we'll do now is I'm going to save this acid. This acid can still dissolve precious metals, silver. So we'll save this and use it in a future refining video. I'm adding some distilled water to the gold now. And what we'll do is let this boil in some distilled water. Look at that, man. That stuff just looks fantastic. I'm going to set it back up here on the heat. And we'll let this boil in some distilled water. I was wiping down the inside of the fume hood here. And I noticed we've got a fastener over here that's covered with a little plastic cap. This one over here, the plastic cap has come off of it. There's another one down here. These metal fasteners will be exposed to the fumes from the acid digestions that we're doing in here. Plus, if you look at the light, it's an explosion-proof light, but it's got metal on it. And what will happen is the fumes will come in contact with this metal, start corroding it, and then dripping pieces of contamination down into our work. So all that's going to have to be modified, and it's another reason why this type of fume hood is not suitable for acid digestions. I've actually had this on here boiling for about an hour and a half now in distilled water. So what we'll do is pour this off into our silver jar. It's just distilled water, but it may have a little bit of nitric acid in with it. Alright, we've recovered our gold now with nitric acid boils, removed all the silver and base metals. Now we're ready to refine the gold with aqua regia. To begin the refining process, I've got hydrochloric acid, and what we're going to do is add about 400 milliliters of hydrochloric acid to the gold in our beaker. As usual, we'll be adding some sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid will combine with any lead in here that may be present, forming lead sulfate, and then we can filter out 100% of any lead that may be present. This is about 4 troy ounces of gold. So let's, I think I'm going to try about 50 milliliters of nitric acid. And let's pour that right on in now. And we'll set this up on the heat and start dissolving the gold now in aqua regia. This took about a half hour. Looks like we've got just about everything to go into solution here. Might be a few solids left down on the bottom of the beaker. It's probably not gold. Let this, bring it down off the heat and let it cool. I'm going to cool the solution off, dilute it down, and use some ice here to precipitate out any silver chloride that we may have in our solution. I've got my vacuum filtration flask set up here with a filter paper. Now we'll go ahead and filter our solution. Here's how that's looking. Here's the junk in the filter. It's still got some gold I need to rinse out of there. But I do not want to rinse any contamination out of this filter down into our nice clear solution. Look at that, man. Nice and clear. So I'm going to put another flask up here, and I'll capture the rest of the gold solution in this flask that I rinse out, and we'll add that to the stock pot. I'll scrub the beaker out, cleaned it up real good. Here's our solution, clear and bright. Got ice cubes down here made out of distilled water. So we're going to pour our solution in here now. Whenever I have 2 or more troy ounces of gold that I'm precipitating, I always add ice because there's going to be a lot of heat generated from the reaction of precipitating the gold out of solution with the SMB. I'm going to get a little of the solution on a piece of filter paper. We're going to test with stannous to verify that we have gold in solution. That dark stain tells us that we definitely have gold in solution. I've got our stump out by Bonide. Stump out by Bonide is sodium metabisulfite. I buy this at Ace Hardware. We're going to go ahead and put a spoon in right now. Here goes our first spoon of SMB. It's probably going to take about 10 spoons of the SMB. That was 1. Here's 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. Here we are. We're starting to get a head of white foam on top. 8. 9. That should do it. I think we're there. 10 spoons, like I thought. I'll give this a stir. And what we'll do now is cover this up and just let it settle completely. And we'll get our pure gold out of this beaker. Here's our funnel. Get this filter paper and put it in our paper storage. Here's the solution that we pulled through that filter paper. I'm just going to add this to my temporary waste container. And back here's a beaker that had gold stuck to it, and I cleaned it out with a little aqua regia. I add this to the temporary waste container. I've allowed the gold to settle out. Here's our gold, looking good. Add this solution to the waste container. Alright, there's the gold down in there. I'm going to rinse this with some distilled water. Any gold that gets poured over with this rinse will get captured in our waste container and we can recover it later on. Just rinsing the excess chemicals, if any, that are on this gold. I'm going to rinse the gold with some hydrochloric acid. I'm going to add some hydrochloric acid. I'm going to set it up on the heat and give it a quick boil in hydrochloric acid. I've had this on boiling in hydrochloric acid for about 10 minutes. And we're going to pour this off into our waste container. It's acquired a little bit of a yellow color there. I've got some hydrochloric acid in this bottle. I'm going to rinse the gold with some more hydrochloric acid. Pour that off. Still a yellow color to it. Now I'm going to try to rinse with a little bit of water here, cold water. Gold is looking really good here. Hopefully we'll get a nice pure bar out of this. Now I'm going to add more hydrochloric acid. We're going to redissolve this a second time. It's about 400 milliliters. I'm going to set it back up on the heat. Last time I did this, I forgot to start the time-lapse camera, so we'll get that going. Now what we'll do is measure out about 50 milliliters of nitric acid. That seemed to work well for us for the last dissolve. I'm just going to add this right in, and boom, we get an immediate reaction. Got us a very pretty, clear and bright orange chloroauric acid solution. I'm going to pull this down off the heat and let it cool off. Adding some ice to cool it down. Ice cubes are made from distilled water. Go ahead and filter our solution now. It looks outstanding. Nice and clear. I've got the solution pulled through this filter. Filter's clean. No contamination in the filter. Here's our solution. No traces of cloudiness or any contamination. I mean, you can read a newspaper through it. I'm going to add it now to our beaker over here full of ice. Condensation on the outside of the beaker. The solution is crystal clear. stump out. It's going to start adding it right in. Should be about 10 spoons, just like we did earlier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's some white foam starting to form. 8 and 9. That should do it. I've allowed the gold to settle completely. It looks very, very pure. Nice color. Notice the solution is crystal clear and colorless. I'm going to pour off the waste solution into my temporary waste container. And now what we'll do is I've got a bottle here that I've labeled hydrochloric acid. And we'll rinse off the gold now with some cold hydrochloric acid from this bottle. You should never hold a beaker by its rim like that, three tips. Slip out of your hand and break. And now what we'll do is we're going to pour off the hydrochloric acid that we used to rinse the gold. We're going to rinse it with some distilled water now. Next we'll pour off the water. I'm going to add some hydrochloric acid. I'm going to put it up on the heat and allow it to boil in hydrochloric acid. Here's the gold that we boiled in hydrochloric acid. I don't see any kind of color going on in there, like nice and clear. I'm going to pour this off now. Look like down inside the beaker. High purity gold sponge. Giving this one final water rinse. I think we've got it cleaned up enough. Alright, here we go. We're gonna get the gold into a melt dish now. Let's take our gold over here to the melt table. And we're going to melt this up now into a gold bar. Alright, here's our bar of pure gold. Thing is just absolutely breathtaking. I don't think I can describe to you what it's like to look at it, and I know the camera doesn't do it justice. We were expecting 123.4 grams. Let's see what we actually got here. It's 119.6. Yield's a little off. Let's see what that is in troy ounces here. Troy ounces, we got 3.85 troy ounces. Nice gold bar. Another successful refining. This will conclude the video. Thank you for watching.